Hello, today is April 23rd, 2019. This is the conformance subproject of SIG architecture. We have a light agenda, so if you could add your details or any agenda items you want to talk about to the meeting notes, that would be useful. The first up we have is sort of a action item follow-up. I have not seen John. I can poke him about the images issue. And I'll poke him online too. The next one on the action item follow-up was the automation around the project board, and Srini said he was going to take a look at it. So Srini?
I did push the code as is into a separate PR. I have linked it. It's 12.
Can you link in the meeting notes, please?
Yeah, I will. So that PR is actually the same code that already been there in the other PR,
Mm-hmm.
so, which is 10401. But when looking at this, we also found there was a issue. Hacker and we both were debugging. There's an issue with the project plugin itself. We are debugging that. There's a recursive loop in there causing it not work. And the other thing I realized was the functionality itself is pretty minimal in this PR that I ported. We need probably more than that. Like when an issue is opened against area of conformance, we need to bring that into the project board, not just the PRs. And while we were discussing about the project, about the PR lifecycle itself, it mandates us to have some kind of a standard around what columns and what states the PRs can have. Like, currently if somebody reviewed the PR, we move them into one column, and then once we get the LGTM, we move it into needs approval, which is conformance specific.
I think I don't really care about some of the other columns that can be done manually. I think the inbound triage is the most important, so that it's not lost in the noise. And that's the one where it requires human intervention. Like, because a reviewer is actually reviewing these things anyways along the life cycle, that it doesn't matter if the automation doesn't automatically promote to the other columns. I think the only thing that matters is that it gains visibility to this group as soon as the issue is created. Otherwise, somebody has to go through and periodically do the diff between what is in the triage bucket and what is in the in KK.
Sounds good. If that is the case, we already handle in that PR for the PRs that are coming in, we can put them into triage bucket. We need to do the same thing for the issues too, so I can work on that.
Yeah, so if you get that feature in, that I think was the missing gap for automation. Once we have that, then I think it's really easy for us to run through the project board every single time. And as we assign people and do things, that person, whoever's the assignee, can give an update, and we can move the cards along or the issues and PRs along the board.
Makes sense. If not, we cannot standardize all the projects. I understand.
Yeah, exactly. I think the first part is just making it visible. I poked John because there was a follow-up action with regards to the images problem. So I didn't know if there's any update at all, John, to we have some odd images and we need to dedupe these.
Yeah, so I was going to just add that to the list of things to talk about the agenda. So I was wrong on the number. It's closer in the 40s, but it's around 7 point something gigs. But doing the investigation, there were a few things I found. There was already some I mean, there's some images that are getting reused, but only 2 or 3 times. It's kind of unclear what functionality they're really trying to do. So I do think there's some centralization we could do, but out of the 7.5 gigs of images, 2 of them are the vector math stuff for doing like graphics work. And, like I don't use that test image. One of them is, I think both of them are around 2 gigs each. And there's actually 0 tests that use like the V2 of the image. But whoever is working with those images says like, now we can phase towards using these. So I don't think the answer is necessarily like getting rid of one of those, right? We'd still be at 5 gigs. But probably the solution is going to look more like splitting up the list of images that are there. It's good that it's centralized in a single place, in a single file. But maybe we do need to still look at how we can break that out so that it's in more useful segments. So like if you're really just wanting to run conformance tests, these are the images you need. And then we can focus on maybe having that as small as possible. If you're running a bucket load of images tests, then it's fine that you're going to have 7 gigs of images that you're pre-pulling and using in some air gap situation, whatever.
If there's a spreadsheet, if there's a spreadsheet that we could review, I think that would be useful. So then we could focus the conversation around what images are used within what tests. And if they are conformance related, we can try to dedupe those specific ones and probably get more people to help out with that effort.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to try and, I mean, it can be either a manual process to see what images are getting used in specifically the conformance test. What I did was I made a custom build of the tests, and every time you called the functions to get the image name from that centralized location, it threw out a log line, and then I grabbed the logs. And it looks like there's only maybe 14 images that are getting used in conformance test, which seem pretty reasonable. You could probably dedupe those further. But even if there's 14, I think they're going to be, you're looking at maybe like a gig of actual images. So that's really reasonable. But yeah, a little more work to go into there and then put up a recommendation.
I think we already had the list of conformance images. How come you haven't been able to find it? We actually have support for for
Steve added the flag.
Yes.
I asked him to add the flag so that you can actually get the output for the conformance images from the command line.
Correct. Yes.
It should be 14, but I think deduping is still worthwhile. It's actually in a constants list that can be.
Oh, okay, I'll take a look. I didn't see if he had already pulled those. Yeah, I mean, I knew there was the master list of here's the 47 of them, but I didn't know that other work had gone into looking at which ones were the conformance specific ones.
Yeah, I think we could probably dedupe them. I honestly don't see why, for the conformance test, I honestly don't see why there isn't just one, to be honest. Just having one test to rule them all. I do know that some of the tests do weird things where like it pulls down Nginx, right? And I think you can just smash that into a single container with a from line, right?
Yeah, there's some that use Nginx. There's some that use like iPerf. There's some that use some other net tools. So it makes sense to maybe have a few so that you're not just dumping binaries. And some of the networking ones, I'm not sure how many of those are conformance, but it looked like they had some extensive logic that maybe wouldn't work well as just being smushed in. But there's the Nginx, which is just a simple server. Then there's a test web, something called like test web server. And then from that is a Kitten and a Nautilus. And all those are pretty much just like, make sure that the image is different, you know? So it's super simple if we want to smush them together.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll keep taking a look at it and see how we can support.
Well, we'll follow up as an action item for next time then too. So both the action items for today probably will follow up again next time. Next up on the list was, I put this here when I was going through stuff, is that there's a label we call lifecycle active. We use this inside SIG cluster lifecycle to denote when things are being worked on. So it doesn't really, we don't really need, we have like an in progress and an in review. My guess is that if we're, we don't really need 2 columns. Lifecycle active would denote, the label lifecycle active would denote that it's in progress versus not. So I don't know what other people think, but I think it's kind of superfluous to have that extra column on the project board. Doesn't give me any information. Thoughts, complaints, questions?
Does that tag ever expire automatically? Like if it goes without comments or a PR long enough?
Then it will go through life cycle stale and then life cycle rotten. So that happens over 180 days total. 90 days for the first one, then I think 90 again for the second one. So if we, but that would be visible on the project board too as well. And our project board's pretty small by most other boards comparison.
Yeah, I guess the thing I was getting at was like on the Windows board, in progress means someone's actually working on it, and then there's not a label for that. Whereas if an issue is just active but nobody is looking at it, then the fact that it's in the backlog rather than in progress is helpful.
Yeah, okay.
But,
I don't really have strong opinions, to be honest, so. Any other questions, comments, complaints? I'm fine with leaving it out.
Would it be useful to have another dynamic label where it says lifecycle active or maybe it's lifecycle, but recently updated in the last month, so that we can tell when stuff has not been touched in a month?
The stale will be added to it after 90 days. That's like a 90-day window. I don't want to create yet another label, but if we want to talk with test infra about, changing stale to be a 1-month cycle and then rotten to be, because right now it's 180 days, that's a long time because we're giving people plenty of leeway. But I think if we wanted to shorten that window, I'd be supportive of that, but that's a test infra problem, not necessarily we'd have to talk with them because that would apply to everything. So if you want to follow up with Aaron and Eric, I'm fine with that.
Thanks.
Next up, column workflow automation. Srini and Hippiaker.
Yeah, I think we covered that. You answered the question already. So.
Okay. Claudio.
Yeah.
Windows support for Kubernetes test images. This is what kind of a follow-on for our, we need to push the images.
Yeah, basically I added the Windows images build process in there, and also added the README file, which includes all the necessary steps to also include the Windows node into the building process. It would still require for someone from Google to actually have some Windows nodes, which they'll have to configure with TLS and add those certificates to the Docker build node so they can be built remotely. There are still 2 images left that are missing from this pull request. I still have to add them, but that's mostly because they are very different. And I have one other commit which adds 5 other images which are outside of the Kubernetes test images folder, but they are still used in conformance and other tests that are necessary to be run. Some of them are the GB Redis slave image, the GB front end, the pause image, and Nginx. Although the Nginx one is a bit trickier to do because we actually have to build 2 different versions, since we're using in tests the Nginx, and Nginx knew image for some upgrades tests.
Okay. We don't need to go through the minutia of all of it. I think what I want to do in this meeting is assign a couple of people to take a look at it. I know that DIMS has had a lot of experience working with the Googlers to get images in place and the multi-arch manifests in place. And I know John's working on the image deduplication, so I think they seem like two good candidates to review. DIMS and John, does that seem fair?
Yes, I actually pinged a couple of people already. Manjunath was one of the people that I pinged on that, and also Listex, Linus. So I think I'll try to follow up to make sure that they take a look. Linus is probably traveling this week. I don't know about Manjunath, so it might be next week before we can.
And also some extra details that I would like some feedback on. I've added a README file in that pull request, which basically explains the necessary steps for building the images. I may be missing some of the Linux parts there. So if you have any ideas to put there, that would be good.
Right. Yeah, I'll take a look at that too. So do you have instructions in there on how to connect to the Windows remote? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's everything, including the building process with the Windows nodes.
Okay.
Basically, to the make command, you just have to add one extra argument, the remote Docker URL.
Right, and how you set up the remote the environment on the other side of the URL? You have that documented somewhere?
Yeah, in the README.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you got questions on getting suitable machines, feel free to ping me. I can get you stuff on Azure, or Peter or Yuju have stuff on GCE.
Okay, thank you.
They've been assigned. We can follow up on this one. I put it into the in review column currently. There was 2 items that were followed up in the in review. I don't see Quentin on the call, but he's been on this issue for a very long time, and we haven't actually gotten feedback from here. Dims, I saw that. I think both you and I commented on this one. Do we want to just take this one, or do we want to poke Quentin one more time?
I think I'll take one more look at this one and then send it off to Brian.
That sounds good.
Okay. Can you assign it to me, please?
You are already assigned. There's multiple assignees.
Okay.
So you are already assigned there.
Okay, thank you.
So if you look at the board, 2 of the 3 are actually assigned to you. The one that's on me was the LGTM was canceled, and we were supposed to talk about it here. Aaron had requested that we talk about it here. Was the add E2E to verify run as non-root options in pod security context. And I'm trying to recall the details of why he wanted this conversation. I have a quick question while I'm trying to re-encapsulate the universe. Do folks know if Omichi is working with the CNCF, or is he kind of doing his own thing independently?
Omichi works for NTT, I think, NTT Docomo, if I remember right.
I think so.
He's not, I don't think he works for the CNCF.
Okay, I was just curious, like, where he's getting his priorities from, because like they've been spending a lot of time sending me PRs and reviews for GoLit stuff, and right. I'm like, we've got these project boards, and and we have a breakdown both here and as well as in the testing comments stuff. It'd be nice to kind of channel his efforts towards more high value targets, I think.
Yeah, so he did the same thing with OpenStack also. He was very active in the conformance testing for OpenStack. And I can see he's following the similar things that he was doing there here also. But I think he's setting his own priority. I don't think NTT itself has entity just gives him time to work on this stuff, and I
Okay.
think he's following his own thinking here.
Okay. I think if folks see him or chat with him online, if he's carrying different hours, obviously he's
yeah,
APAC.
he's from Japan, I think. So
yeah. So if people are up super late at night or super early in the morning, East Coast time, then feel free to kind of direct him towards the project boards. I think that would probably be a better use of his time, maybe. Because it also like eats my time when I have to go through and review like 10,000 lines of Golang changes to make sure that the one patch change that they did inside of there that is not fruitful.
understood.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to go through this one independently and get the context swapped back in. Let me see what it says. Example tests which are not eligible for promotion and conformance. Anything that checks optional condition fields. So this has been such as reason or message. This has been common currently across a number of different functions that there's a bunch of tests that actually leverage conditions. And I even talked about this with other people. And there are problems currently with a bunch of the tests then. And I don't see this as a problem. I see this as people had highly opinionated views of the universe, and we kind of wrote them down sparsely, but we did not, I don't think we have broad consensus from SIG architecture. Maybe we should bring this up to the broader group about why we are negating certain tests, because this is the second test. This is actually the third, I think, test that I've gone through now that has a similar condition. And I think there's a greater good problem where like we're being pedantic about an idea, even though we've been loosely enforcing it or haven't enforced it at all, and versus like getting better test coverage in the wild. So I think I'll bring that up during the next SIG architecture meeting. But that was that particular issue. So there, we talked about it, Aaron. From there, I was going to just, unless other folks have other agenda items, I was planning to just walk the backlog and the project board. Is there anything else that folks wanted to discuss before we get into it? Going once, twice, 3 times. All right, so let's walk the project board. Hopefully everyone's been seeing my screen as I jump back and forth. Tracking issue, pods, that's an issue. That's also an issue. Does anyone have an update with regards to sort of the...
So as far as with the meeting that I had with Globen folks this week, they are kind of encroaching into those corner cases where they're limited in the number of, they don't have a good pipeline, I would say, to add or to convert existing tests. They're running into other areas like jobs and service accounts. So
jobs isn't even, well, I guess that's fine.
Yeah, it is very indeterministic too. There are some PRs that are rejected because there are some open issues there. So I asked them to create a similar JSON format spec kind of thing, which are covered, which are not covered. But that's not going to get us more coverage added in this release. So we need to think about how to make their time valuable. I don't have a good answer for that. But.
So who's coordinating the efforts with Globant?
It's mainly me. I have a weekly meeting with them. We can open up that as a public meeting if anybody is interested, and Hippie Hacker joins the meeting along with me.
Is it just a time? Is it just a time zone problem? The reason why they're not attending this one?
7 a.m. 8 a.m. PST now. So
8 a.m. PST is totally reasonable for most folks that are not PST. Is it possible for them to join? What time is this?
This
So
is
this is 12.
Yeah.
So what time is 8 a.m. PST for them? I don't know what time. I don't know what time zone they're in.
8:30 in the night right now. It will change. So we will move to 7 a.m. if the time zone changes. So
Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon them to, given that they're employees of the CNCF working on this particular area, to be here. I don't think it's if we need to move the time of this meeting to make it more accommodating for them, seeing how they're doing a bunch of the work so that they're guided in the correct way. I think having them disconnected from this effort it is not good for the project or for them.
yeah, so far I'm being the liaison between the two parts. So
Are they aware of this meeting?
yeah, they are. Yeah.
Okay. So if it's 8 p.m., 4 hours earlier, that means it's 4 o'clock their time when they're doing it. So perhaps because we do every other week, perhaps we could do a 8 a.m. PST on the off weeks, communicating with Global. I don't know. Either way, I think we should, maybe as an action item, we should.
8 a.m., which is basically, which is 8:30 p.m. for them.
Oh, so right now it'd be midnight for them.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So I think if you can sync with them about a time and try to coordinate a time for us to have an off week conversation with the Global folks, I think that would be a fruitful effort.
Sounds good.
Okay.
You want me to set up a meeting like one off once in a while?
Yes. What's your handle, Srini, for
Brah, BRAH. Yeah. Sorry.
I'll also take a look at this too. This is the no conformance test promotion. This is also some of the things that they've been working on. Dims, you opened this one a while ago, and I know there's been a bunch of PRs against it. This is demoting the privilege problem.
Right. I don't know what the latest one in this is.
How about I assign this to you and unassign Aaron because he's not here? And then we can follow up next time.
Okay.
Well, you opened it.
Yeah, I know.
Kabang. Work in progress. Add ETB to verify blocking behavior pre-stop hook.
That is a corner case we came across. It's working.
This isn't even a promotion, though.
It's not for promotion. It's adding another test.
Someone from the peanut gallery want to take a. I saw that Mike Denise originally looked at this. Want to take ownership and lead on this to help evaluate and take a look at it?
It should be part of the kubelet, I think.
You can assign it to me. I am KIN.
That's totally not intuitive to all.
Thanks.
All right. Promote DNS. I think the DNS ones, John is on all of those. He's been in the networking stuff. All right. So let's take a look at some of this stuff. This is old. And Quentin has, like, we have a bunch of requirements listed. This is running good conformance test, doc required. There's a bunch of criteria. I'm gonna kind of like leave this here, I guess, if he's not gonna work on it. I'm not even gonna put this in this sorted backlog. I'm gonna put this over here. Oh, wrong page. That's what happens when I click too much. E2 namespaces serial should ensure that pods are removed when a namespace is deleted. This is old. I don't think it's not. Does somebody want to take a look at this one in particular and triage it? Eric isn't even working on the project anymore.
I'll take a look at it. I'll send it to me.
Right. Rename conformance test name for pod creating CPU and memory resources. Aaron looks like he was reviewing. It looks like it's actually just waiting for a rebase. It has actually been approved. This should be waiting for approver. Come on. All right, we'll go one column over and then scroll. Sorry, I hate trackpads with a fiery passion. Promote container runtime end-to-end test conformance suite. This is kind of this is already in progress actually too. Watch conformance test, more resources than config map. This one looks like it's also old. It's an issue. This one's actually fairly interesting. I'm going to unassign these people because they haven't been working on it. Well, 2018, so it's a year old. Does somebody want to take a look at this one?
I'll take it. Hippie. HH.
Right. Test coverage for pod quality of service. I agree with the statement. It looks like the Globant folks are working on it because that's one of the Globant engineers, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
But it's been, how old is this sucker? 23 days? Are they working on it or is it just filed?
They want to work on that. Yeah.
I don't see a problem with this. Do you know any reason why they're not working on it?
Well, the focus was on the part spec, so we wanted to open these issues and then start.
So oh, you're loud, hippie. You're loud typing.
Sorry.
It is part of the behavior of a pod, right? A question I have is, and other folks can feel free to chime in. I know Windows doesn't support like C group style behavior for quality of service on splitting. Is that correct?
Yep.
Right. So I do think this would be a Linux only set of tests. It's kind of funny then. That's one of the fundamental precepts of Kubernetes.
But I do think that we support setting limits for memory and CPU, though.
You
But
support the setting, but you don't support the enforcement.
I'm pretty sure they're also enforced, because I remember a bug long time ago that would actually crash the Docker daemon on Windows. There was a test that was setting the memory limit way too low, and that would cause the Docker daemon to crash.
Yeah, I mean, the limits are passed through. The difference is that you don't have nested C groups the same way, or you don't have something like that. So like, but we don't even support setting pod level resources today, only container level, right?
Correct. It's only container level.
Yeah, that should work.
Okay. I think this is worthy to do.
The difference is that there's no killer on Windows. So
what does it do? You have swap off, right?
yeah.
Right. So something's got to give. As long as the basic respect is given, I think, and there's a test that allows you to give the ability to do some type of QoS guarantees, I think that seems fair. Although, if somebody can tell me what a millicore is, I think it requires. I'll give you some indeterminate number of AWS or GC credits, because that's an arbitrary measure, by the way.
I think that's like 1,000th of a core. So basically, 500 millicores is half a core, basically.
I know, but what does that mean? Like, if I ask for a millicore, that's not a quantifiable thing. It's arbitrary. Right? So if I land on an ARM processor, what's versus landing on a Xeon, what the hell's a millicore, right? So I think that's worthy to be sorted in the backlog. It doesn't look like they're working on it yet. So once it's in progress, we can just drag it over. Somebody gonna say something?
Yeah, it sounds good. We can start working on that.
Okay. E2E proposal, verify TCP socket property of V1 probe along with successor failure threshold. I'm going to defer to the networking people on this particular one. I'm going to assign it to John, because John moved from triage to sort of backlog. I think he wants it to be worked on. So I'm going to say he's not here, so. I think he's putting it in there to work on these things. So we have, and he's also there to review these other things. There's one. I thought I assigned him. Did I not do that? This one should probably be assigned to him. It's an actual PR, not an issue. So I will do that. Does, so curiosity real quick, shouldn't does node port work properly on Windows? Viewer.
Yeah, but I think there may be something goofy, because the way that some of these tests work with node port is they schedule a pod with host networking in order to test it, and that's not going to work.
All right, Patrick Ling and John. All right. Could you take a look at this, Patrick?
Sure.
And the other PRs are assigned to John. All right, we had a bunch of stuff in progress. We have a reasonable backlog. John's not here, so he can update those too. And these, if Srini, if you talk with the Globin folks, we're totally good to go with executing on some of that. If you have concrete feedback for us to review from the Globin folks about the issues that they're running into, we can always add that to the agenda and discuss it here too. If we're not, if we don't have time to talk.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'll bring those open issues here into this meeting. So.
Okay. Conformance tests are S390X mainframes. Really? I think its priority is really backlog, like low.
Who's going to pay the electricity bill?
I'll just set up a mainframe back here.
I literally cannot host this in my house. So I have a serious question. Like, if I see a flaky conformance test that nobody is looking at, what is the official procedure?
Raise it to this group, I think, in our Slack channel. Because if there shouldn't be a flaky conformance test. That's one of the criteria to become a conformance test, is that it should not be flaky. So if it is, that's a warning signal.
And we move it out first, I think.
Well,
yeah.
So the API machinery aggregator test that I modified like a couple of weeks ago, it has been flaky before that. But I'm only seeing the flakes like locally and the new jobs we're creating, but the official GC jobs for some reason are not flaky. So I'm starting to think that maybe it's a parallel versus non-parallel situation.
Correct. Yes. If it's serial and flaky, that's the combination that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Is it marked as, is it denoted as serial right now?
No.
It might need to be. So if people haven't reported it, which I have not seen an aggregated conformance test failure in the wild, I've never seen it in the wild come through, then that usually could be that your local, how are you running locally?
Yeah, it's failing locally for me in parallel mode.
Yeah. Maybe we should denote that test as serial explicitly.
Yeah, I'm going to try to debug it first.
Okay.
Okay.
Consolidate test images, prove documentation. You're already working on this. We'll get an update next time. Unable to promote E2E, which are using the optional condition fields. This is what we were talking about. So I'm gonna move this over to in progress. And I need to have a conversation with Brian on this one. So Brian just said no. What if we emphasize using core libraries? All right. We need to give them concrete, tangible action to make progress on the specific tests. So if you can talk, when you talk with them, Srini, I think he gave us a couple of examples here. Wait for a reason. Okay, I'll take a look at this one, I guess. Important soon. Claudio
Yeah.
Creates host path pods as unprivileged.
Yeah, at least on Windows nodes.
That doesn't seem right for Linux. You have the if Windows or something? Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, we'll create the pod as unprivileged on Windows nodes.
Who wants to help review this one besides Ken? Who's familiar with host value mounts and host path? Wants to verify?
I'll help.
Update pod creation time based on sorting code.
I think this has been reviewed and given some direction. We need to correct the way this PR is.
Srini, your volume's really low. Can you?
Sorry. Yeah, this particular problem has been actually we talked to the 6 scheduling folks and they asked us to change the way this PR is working. So we are working on it.
So it's more in progress. I think what I probably need to do is update a lot of this backlog and move things that are PRs to in progress that need to be in reviewed. I'll take that as an action item. Somebody want to take a look at this one?
Assign it to me. I think I will handle this.
Remind me one more time, Srini, what your handle is.
BRAH.
All right, I'll get it memorized by the by next week.
At BRAH.
All right. Added unit test failure coverage for admin pods without sorting. That's the one we just looked at. Hold on 1 second here.
Those two are separate, I think. They should be together, actually. That's what is happening. So we need to work on that. There are 2 sorting ones, right?
Yes.
One is fixing the code and one is testing it, I think. They club together. Please assign that to me too.
storage validation, promote multi-volume test.
Oh, okay. These validation tests, I'm sorry. I mean, at some point in time, I thought that we have to start doing validation suites. Until that PR on validation suites is agreed upon, I have stopped working on the storage validation tests. So there are a whole bunch of them, like 4, I think. So I don't know what I should do, but it should not be area conformance. I think validation suites probably are SIG ownership rather than conformance ownership, maybe.
Well, these validation suites and profiles like that. I don't know where the overlap or where the delineation stops, right? Because there should be, the CNCF should really own what is a good storage driver. So that way you can have uniformity across different storage providers and make sure that if I run something on Azure and I run something on AWS, I have some level of guarantees, a stamp of approval for certain storage characteristics and behavior across those providers.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what all these storage ones are?
Yeah.
Storage. Okay. Create end-to-end test case coverage for admit pod by sorted order. That's the same one, right?
Right.
Right. SSH keys and end-to-end test.
I think I was the original instigator of that. If you remember, when I was using Sonabui to run some end-to-end tests that required SSHing between pods to check, something on the host itself. It was not API driven, which was your complaint. It was just a philosophy of whether that's some. I think you didn't want that to be tested because it wasn't API driven. And then other people, I think, chimed on the ticket saying like that was the way to test it. I don't know what the right answer is there.
I'm going to assign this for you. I think the person that chimed in on it is like, yes, it's a good test, but it's not a conformance test. I think because I don't know if you can guarantee that SSH behavior between pods across other providers, especially if they have security policies and whatnot. So there's a bunch of tracking issues for major feature level development. These are all opened by you, Srini.
Right. The idea is then we will, if we have tests, they should be linked to this. PRs, they should be linked to this. So
yeah, I think the idea of, so it's weird for some of the things you opened because etcd is a detail, it's not a requirement, right? Some people have even replaced etcd as the backend storage facility, and that is fine. But
right, but in that case, right? I mean, we have to have basic coverage of how we read and write to the backend database. that kind of stuff, don't you?
That already exists inside of by doing basic level tests that exist already, like writing and reading pods, writing and reading services. And there's even like tests inside of the conformance suite already. You can beef up that characteristics and behavior of the storage layer. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do because the code inside of Kubernetes depends highly on things like resource version, right? And guaranteeing that your resource versions are respected, especially in the multi-writer scenario. That's an example where you need to make sure that if there's a conflict, it's doing the right thing.
What about stuff like etcd has specific behavior on watches and stuff?
That's driven through the API server. So the API server has watch tests.
Okay. So do we have adequate coverage on like what the timeouts are for some of those things and how to reestablish them and all that, those pieces?
I can't speak off the top of my head. I'd have to look through the test suite, but I do know that there is a set of tests all around watch behavior. Are they completely covering? No, but I think that's a better area for doing testing than just saying like coverage for etcd.
Agreed.
One thing that was Brian mentioned in one of the SIG architecture meetings that this is high, because people are using other backend databases, it's very important that we have the coverage. So yeah, sometimes
it should be tested through the API server. But we should make sure that like we have adequate coverage there such that if you replace etcd with another storage system and it causes some issues, that we detect those issues.
Correct. I agree.
If that is the case, then we should concentrate on some ETEs that are promoted or not promoted in that area, or we.
Well, like key areas that are worthwhile investing in are watch behavior, resource version detection for multiple writers. One thing we don't currently, if they have an HA deployment, this would surface that multiple writer scenario if it's not a CP storage layer. So like, I love this funsies. If somebody is actually trying to make a conformance validation for something like SQL, well, not SQLite, because you have transactional guarantees, but you can't have HA support then. Anyways, the resource version for multiple writers is fundamental. Watches is fundamental. I'd have to walk through the storage layer again, which has been eons now, and verify the high level behavior that you'd expect.
Maybe the issue here is like look at the things in etcd that are like high risk for. These aren't common to all database systems potentially. Like watches are not common to all database systems, and then figure out like what our dependencies on those are.
Phil, do you consider like paging, pagination stuff to be something we should look at?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm going to send this to me, and I will try to take as an. Oh, we're actually over time. So why don't I take a look at this and assign it for next time for a follow-up? I can give you a better list because I helped write the storage layer. So I can give you a better list next time, although it's been 2 years. And I'll try to get you more detailed information, but the title itself is a little misleading. But we're out of time, so we'll have to wait till next time. Srini, if you can follow up offline and we can try to sync with the global people, I think that'd be great.
Cool. I'll do that. Thanks.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.